Welcome to the latest episode of 5 on the Floor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app. On Android, recommend Spotify or the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. On Apple Podcasts. Also, check out Off the Floor. Communicate with us and Heat fans all day long. We do pop in there pretty regularly, and if you've been following the host updates, you've pretty much known what was going to happen during free agency before it happened. So check it out as we head, I guess, into a little bit of a dead period, but there'll be plenty to discuss, I'm sure. Check it out. Off the Floor link is right here in the description on the podcast feed and on the YouTube channel. Also, check out the great sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, including our friends over at Valvoline. This episode is sponsored by Valvoline Instant Oil Change. With oil changes complete in about 15 minutes, maintaining your vehicle is just a quick stop on the way to your summer destinations. Click the link in our bio to receive a coupon that saves $8 off Valvoline full-service conventional oil change or $10 off the full-service full synthetic or diesel oil change. These coupons can also be switched out with other offers, so make sure you check it out. We've got the link right here in the description, again, on the podcast feed and also on the YouTube channel. Check out Valvoline. And now, today's episode.
Down to Biscayne. Yikes. 5 on the floor. Ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing. You can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frogs. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the floor playing. Got it all band. Y'all seen the block. Stop with one hand. And Pat we trust. It's power, have the guts. We're here to bring the heat. Y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, and Alex Toledo, plus others from the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
All right, welcome back to 5 on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick and at 5 Reasons Sports. I got Alex Toledo. You can follow him at Tropical Blanket. Greg Sylvander, you can follow at Greg Sylvander. So the news today, Haywood Highsmith, we told you that this was the likelihood. Actually, all of us on the podcast yesterday, Alex, myself, and Brady endorsed this for what essentially was the Heat's final move at this time. We're going to talk about where they stand. But again, we gave you that data beforehand. Basically, they had one more vehicle to play. It wasn't Haywood and another guy. It would be Haywood or another guy. They obviously looked at the list and decided that Haywood was more of what they needed. We talked about why they need him. Obviously, no DeLon Wright back this year, no Kel'el Martin back this year. They are thin on perimeter and wing defenders. We know that Eric Spoelstra needs those. That is what Haywood is. Just got a chance to talk to him on the Zoom call. I asked him about the idea of taking a 2-year contract. It was speculated that he might get a longer deal than that. And he basically said, I'm still a young guy. And it sounds like, he said, we're going to keep pushing. So sounds like he was okay with this money for now, but he sees himself potentially making more in the future. So you'll get a motivated guy. This obviously has been a motivated guy since he's come to the Heat. You're talking about a Division II player who is another success story in their developmental program. Now, Heat fans who have been frustrated, first when the Heat paid their developmental guys too much, and then when they've let their developmental guys go, they seem to be all over the place on this. But last year, Max Strus gone, Gabe Vincent gone. They did offer Gabe. They didn't offer Max because they knew they couldn't get in the ballpark. And then this year, Kel'el Martin, they made a significant offer to Kel'el Martin. His agent effed up, just that simple. And they ended up taking half as much money from Philadelphia. So they do retain Highsmith. First, I'll go to you, Greg, because you just didn't have a chance to weigh in on this like we all did. Were you in favor of the move?
Yeah, especially at the cost. I mean, I feel like he came in at a value. He's a player that Spo can trust or has shown that he's trusted in the past. And, it kind of the market leveled out where we thought it would be. He got right around in the neighborhood of the taxpayer mid-level, even though the Heat didn't have to use that exception to retain Haywood Highsmith. He got around that kind of money. And I think initially people were talking full mid-level exception money for Haywood Highsmith. So the market corrected itself. And I think that benefited the Heat in this particular, at least from the standpoint of keeping him. We can talk about the rest of the roster and how close they are to the tax in the second apron now, that they can't really do anything else. So this is the team. And now we can figure out what it means.
Yeah, this is the team barring some kind of a trade that we're not expecting at this time. That's basically where it's at. I mean, could a trade happen? Yes. Could they still move Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson? Doesn't sound like Terry Rozier, but maybe Duncan or Hero for other parts. Yes. Am I anticipating that's going to happen, or am I going to start promoting that so that to get, do 12 podcast episodes on it? No. It feels to me like this was the final move for now. This is likely the team that they're going to take to training camp, and then we'll see. And that's where we're going to get to now, because there are a lot of Heat fans, and we're not going to devote the episode to this, but there are a lot of Heat fans who are frustrated with the offseason. We've tried to address some of those. The Heat's Instagram account is a cesspool. There's like 95% of the comments on there are entirely unrealistic. But again, I'm not going to downplay, because people say I do this. I'm not going to downplay frustration or anger. Fans are fans. They see other teams in the East that have gotten better. The Heat on paper, you could argue, are maybe the 7th or 8th or 9th team in the Eastern Conference at this stage. I think they're probably going to be better than that if they're healthy, but they haven't been healthy. So that's sort of the first hurdle that has to be cleared. But I mean, obviously you've got Boston, you've got Milwaukee now with a full year of Giannis and Dame to integrate. And you've got Philadelphia, which is majorly upgraded. I don't think you can argue against that. Cleveland brings back Donovan Mitchell. Orlando just went through a playoff run, or at least, they got through to the playoffs, and they should be better. They added KCP also as playoff experience. Indiana just got to the conference finals, and then the Knicks. And then there's the teams at the bottom. It kind of feels like the Heat are sort of locked in, I guess, on paper to kind of that 7 through 9 range, which is not a place that I think Heat fans are accustomed to be. But let's try to make the most of it today, Alex. So looking at what they have on paper right now, I was going to ask this question, so don't say this is a hard question. And we discussed it on the last podcast. You've had time to think about it. What would be your starting lineup?
Oh, man. So what would I do?
I knew you were going to give me an oh man. You can't give me an oh man for a topic we discussed.
I didn't know we were going to do starting fives. But look, I just think you could go a lot of different ways. So, like, there's not one that I'm like, oh, this has got to be the one. But, like, we were talking about it on the last one. Like you mentioned, maybe throwing Hawkes in there. I'm not opposed to that, even though I generally think I would probably prefer Jaime off the bench to sub in for Jimmy instead of playing next to him, just so you can get more out of his game instead of having to try to play, I think a role that is not where he's at his best. Not that I don't want him to play with Jimmy, but like I'm still open to that. That wouldn't be my preference. Like I think I would probably try to work, if you're talking about like there's like the starting lineup I would want for them in the playoffs. So like, you know what I mean? Like when the stakes are high, I would probably want to start Haywood in there, just because I don't think their offense is good enough to lean into with like what they have. And I think like the defense has got to be at a, playing at a high level. And I don't think that like starting lineups, are like the end all be all either of, as far as like an indicator of a team's success. So I don't expect Haywood to start during the season, and maybe not even during the playoffs. But, I think a guy like that is, I would probably try to work in there just, based on the personnel that you already got.
But when you say that, when you say Haywood starting, what's your starting backcourt in this scenario?
He would be a wing and next to Jovic and Jimmy. But that's not, again, like, I'm not like, oh, they got to do this. That's just hold
on. Okay, hold on. And obviously Bam is starting. So who's not starting? Tyler, Duncan, or Terry?
That part, honestly, I'm open to like whichever one of those answers. At that point, it's basically just like the idea of sizing up a bit, but not in the way that, some Heat fans want, where it's like Jovic at the 3, Bam at the 4, Ware at the 5. No, I think the way that you can size up what you have now is Haywood is in there, kind of like doing what Caleb would do. And, I just think that backcourt in general is problematic for the playoffs. But for the regular season, I don't think that's going to happen 100%. I don't think that it's going to happen. I think it's going to be Terry and Tyler. Wouldn't be surprised if they go back to Terry and Duncan. But I think they're going to start off with Terry, Tyler, Jovic.
All right, now here's the thing about this. If the lineup that you're talking about, if they're going to do that, then Haywood needs to keep improving his shooting and his playmaking, because otherwise they're not going to have enough offense on the floor. And I did ask him about that today, and he's obviously said he wants to become more of a playmaker. We'll see where the ceiling is there.
Just hit the open threes.
Well, right, but with that lineup, he may need to do more than that. Greg, I'll go to you on this. Okay. I don't think Rozier and Hero is going to be the starting backcourt.
Really? I think that they may start that way, but then they may hit a skid or two and then flex from it. But
I think it's a bad idea. I don't know. I mean, look, if you're going to start Haywood at the 4, again, I always say this is my disclaimer, Sean. I'm sorry, but if you're going to, this is for organizational purposes, okay? If you're going to start Haywood at the 4, which again, Heat fans will hate because they'll be like, you got Ware on the bench, and we just saw Ware go 26 and 12 in the summer league, so he's Wilt Chamberlain now. But like they're going to be like, you have size, and Spo still won't play the size. That's going to be where they go with that. But if you're going to start Haywood, then I could see them starting Duncan and Tyler.
That's an interesting part of that. If they lean defense, I don't think Haywood Highsmith is going to start. I think Niko Jovic is getting thrown out of the conversation too quickly. I think he starts next to Bam. I think that it's Jimmy and then Terry and Tyler, and then they're gonna make that lineup not work before they go to the next lineup. That's my prediction.
Well, they're gonna make it not work because it's not gonna work.
Well, just to be fair, the Terry and Duncan starting lineup that they used at the end of the season didn't have good lineup data either.
I know. None of them did. I know.
Just to be fair, because I know everybody wants to blame Tyler.
I know. And the Hero Robinson one doesn't have good lineup data either. It's had moments, but it doesn't have good lineup data either. Like, honestly, none of their lineups, with these backcourts have good data. I mean, it's just right. I mean, am I wrong? Like they don't. Like empirically they don't. But I understand the lean to say, well, you got Terry to be your starting point guard and Tyler's your starting 2, so you play them together. And I understand, Tyler had said to me when they were starting to play together that he was still seeing the most attention, but he thought as Terry started to get his shooting going, that more attention would go to Terry and it would balance things out a little bit. I can't see them playing in the backcourt more than 15 minutes a game. I feel like it's got to be staggered. I don't know. Like I agree that starting doesn't matter that much, but it does matter for the first. I mean, it does accumulate 12 to 15 minutes with the first and third quarters. And you can't put the 2 of them out there for 25, 30 minutes. You can't. It's too small. And you need to protect them defensively. I don't see it. Like I
think they're
feel
going to bet that they can get away with it during the regular season.
Is Jimmy playing or not? Because that'll help. I mean, that's right.
Yeah, this is under the assumption that Jimmy's balling and playing all out, and that everyone's healthy. Because otherwise, what the hell else can we predict?
What about what Alex touched on earlier, and Greg, you were on that podcast. What about the idea of just saying, you know what, Jaime and Nico, you're the future here. You're starting game 1. How do you build the lineup with the 2 of them? You start Rozier then, right?
Yeah.
Not Tyler?
Correct.
You sure?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
I think so.
If Nico's going to get to show off his point guard skills, then that's different. But I don't know that they're going to impart.
But you can play Jaime off the ball. You can play Jaime on the ball too. They experimented with that some also. Is there any world where they could put Tyler on the bench but start Jaime?
Duncan. I was just thinking about it as you were saying it. That
would start Duncan.
I like that. I like that.
Bring Rozier Ed Hero off the bench. Bring Rozier Ed Hero off the bench.
I mean,
I don't know about that.
It's not going to happen. It's 100% not going to happen. But like,
I will say, Alex, Duncan, of all of those guys, those two-man combinations, Duncan and Jaime have the best chemistry.
I mean, they play well together, and not only that, just like I just think Duncan is somebody who can fit alongside a lot of people. And if you're putting Jaime like in a lineup also with Jimmy, Bam, and one of Tyler or Terry, like I just don't think he's going to touch the ball much. I think he's going to be forced into a role where he's mostly just taking wide open threes, and I don't think that's how he gets in a rhythm. I don't think that's how he's going to be optimized. I'm not against him starting just because, like, whatever. We just want to give, this young guy who's going to be part of our core going forward a lot of minutes and reps. That's fine. And just force him to kind of adjust to this role so that he can, you know what I mean? He can only play one way, whatever. I just think in general, like, if you wanted to do that, if you wanted to start Jaime, Duncan is the easier fit than putting him alongside Terry or Tyler. And then having Terry and Tyler playing each like 25 plus minutes off the bench, 25 to 30 minutes off the bench.
But then you're still playing them together then.
You could still stagger them. you don't have
Yeah,
to.
I mean, you could bring one guy in. I mean, Spo's done that before and then flip
not
it.
a full stagger, but it's like, you know what I mean? Like they're not
Yeah.
only playing together.
But his best bench rotations typically have been when he anchors with one key starter and brings in 4. Like their best, cleanest bench rotations have been that. And if you're going to bring Terry and Tyler off the bench, you really can't do that. I keep coming back to this, okay? I keep coming back to Pat's comments. He was definitive when I asked the question that Tyler is a starter. And he hedged on Rozier.
But he said it about Hero too, though. In that same comment that he made it about Terry, he said it about like it could be one or the other.
Do you really think he's going to put? You really think they're putting Tyler on the bench? Because I don't.
No, I'm not. I don't think that. I think Terry and Tyler are the starters. That would be my bet, along with Nico. That would be just the easy bet. And I completely agree with what Leif said. They'll probably just move on from it once they feel like it's not working anymore. But I don't think that's something that even happens early on in the season. I think they give it a shot, and they're just like you said, this is our starting guards. It's a regular season. You have Jimmy and Bam and Spo. Like you can work around it. I would be surprised if that was still like a starting lineup in the playoffs. So, but that's
so you're bringing in. Well, there may not be playoffs with a lot of way the Heat fans are talking, right? I mean, the play in. Well, okay. So what if
last 2 seasons to happen again?
Right. Well, I mean, is the roster upgraded? It's not, right? I mean,
only if 100% healthy, because that's throwing a different dynamic.
Well, not 100%. They have to be healthier, right? And you have to get jumps from Jovic and Hakis.
Yeah.
Right. That's basically.
But they didn't upgrade the roster. No.
Right. You have to get jumps from Hakis and Jovic, essentially.
Which is reasonable.
Oh, I think they're both reasonable. But as far as the roster, the names on paper.
Yeah.
I mean, they lost Kel'el, right? And they added Burks.
And they replaced essentially DeLon and Caleb with Burks and some rookies who may or may not play. Because honestly, we don't know who.
We don't know. I like both of them, but we just don't know. I mean,
I like all 3 of them.
Oh, I like
Keshad Johnson's the equivalent of a first-round draft pick. Come on, y'all.
You want to talk about?
We're gonna hear that for sure. but I do like
the other thing,
I also like the point guard. I like both point guards actually.
I was going to say they got a couple point guards in the program now. I mean, they never do. So,
well, I kind of like both better than I like the one that they've already two-wayed. But that's just a personal preference, and I'm not Spo because I don't feel Spo feels that way. So I'm just saying, like you're right. They have point guards in the system. I am still not understanding. I'm still not understanding the Thomas Bryant signing. I'll say, why are people upset? And we'll get some more of this after the break. Why are people upset about the Love signing in 2 years? That's fine. It's fine. I mean, how much more money are we talking about there? And what he adds to me is kind of invaluable in that locker room at this stage.
And he's still good on the court.
Right. He was. I know there's certain series he can't play in. I understand that, but he's probably going to give you 40 to 50 pretty decent games, and I think there's value. There were games his minutes saved them. Yeah, there were games his minutes saved them. Honestly, so I'll say that the Thomas Bryant one I don't really get.
I think I can explain it after the break.
All right, let's do that. All right, let's mention another spot, please. Let's mention another sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Our friend Nelson and his team. Maybe he can explain it. He's a big Heat fan. Check him out at 561-891-9620. That's 561-891-9620. Mobile C-Arm and Staffing Services. They bring the X-ray equipment and staffing to you. If you work in a medical office, a hospital, reach out to these fine people. Again, c-armandstaffing.com, 561-891-9620. All right, explain it to me like I'm 4.
This is what I think happened. I think Thomas Bryant was going to opt in, and they asked him to opt out so that they could save a little bit away from the apron, that it would be basically the equivalent amount of money, and they would do right by him by automatically re-signing him if he opted out. That's my speculation, speculation.
Don't aggregate it.
That's good. I like that theory a lot. It just makes a lot of sense. And also because they would need to, like we said on that pod the other day, they would need to build out the back end of the roster, and they basically just picked him over Orlando. But I do get the frustration where it's like he shouldn't really be seeing the floor, and that's not what they're signing him for. And I know that sounds a little ridiculous, but he's only supposed to see the floor like when others don't. It's just how often is that going to happen now if you expect Love and Ware to be like, both a part of what you're doing. So how often is he going to get those chances? Whereas before it was just Love, right? It was, I just like, if you wanted to go with like a different veteran minimum, like wing or guard or whatever, I think that's a reasonable take too. And now it's just like, they can't even use that last roster spot because they're so close to the second apron. They'll probably have to wait till like the second half or like close to the second half of the season, when they could just give out like a prorated contract to a minimum guy, or maybe, promote like a Kashad Johnson to a standard, and then another guy in the two-way system. Like they just can't do anything with that roster spot for months, basically.
I'm curious to see what Tyus Jones and Markelle Fultz end up getting. That'll dictate a little. And Gary Trent, although it does feel like the Gary Trent thing kind of went off the board for them when they signed Burks, and didn't trade Hero Robinson. So there's only so many shooters who Gary Trent has other holes in his game. I know that he's a very, very good shooter, but and he's a better shooter than Burks. But I'm okay with the Burks signing. I get that you add a shooter to your roster for the minimum who has some playoff experience. I understand that one. I'm just not big on Thomas Bryant as a player, I guess. He seems like a good locker room guy, but you're right. It's like a break glass in case of emergency type thing in the big rotation. And it felt like the Orlando Robinson, as much as a really good guy and bright guy and all the rest of it, but it just felt like he bumped against his ceiling. That's it. Like what we saw in Summer League last year, when he got the opportunities, he was functional. Like they didn't lose ground with him, but there wasn't the upside to it. I guess you're right. They just decided with Thomas Bryant, okay, there's like a 12-point game in there for him somewhere when other guys are hurt. But let's before we close here though, rotationally, okay.
Oh man,
some of this is dictated by the starting lineup, but rotationally, there is an opportunity for Ware and Larson in particular. Now, like, right? I wouldn't count them into the rotation to start camp, but if you look at it, you say, okay, you're bringing off the bench. Let's say they go the conventional lineup. All right, let's say they go with Rozier, Hero, Jovic, Butler, Jovic, and Bam. You're bringing Highsmith, Jaquez, Duncan, and Josh, right?
And
That's
Love.
your 4. And Love is your 5. The team is not like, this is the whole thing. Like, if they're healthy, there is some depth to it. I'm not going to talk myself into it much because I did last year, but we know how it worked out. But like, if they're healthy, like, okay, that's a functional core bench, right? You got a little bit of everything. But it feels to me like we're going to be sitting there saying, well, can Larson play again ahead of Josh if they have other playmaking, right? And
can Larson play ahead of Burks?
And why didn't you mention Burks, right? And then can Ware play ahead of Love?
Can he play next to Love? That's one of the questions I'm going to be monitoring. Just see what they do in the preseason, because I'm very, very skeptical we see him next to Bam at all. But yeah, at least early on. But can they play him next to Love? Maybe that's how he sneaks into the rotation. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Greg?
I think that Alex is onto something there, that I don't think you're going to see a ton of Kel'el Ware and Bam initially. I think it's about the fans are going to call for it. And I think that Ware has an opportunity to gain himself a lion's share of the benchman. And it's because, one, you probably want to preserve K-Love in certain scenarios. Another thing, he's kind of matchup dependent to some degree, and he probably won't be available all year. So I think that this is a prime opportunity for Kel'el Ware to find himself into the rotation. Pele Larson also, like these wings we're talking about, they're coming off the bench for Miami. The depth chart is shallow. I'll just say that. And so I think that there is opportunity for Kashad Johnson to find his way onto the court as well. And this is a lot of different guys. I just think that the upside of some of these vets is not going to get in the way of some of these younger players getting an opportunity, because it's a long ass season.
I really hope you're right, man.
Well, I hope you're right, but I have a feeling that there's going to be a lot of frustration with Spo when guys like Josh and Burks are getting minutes ahead of Larson, or Love's getting minutes ahead of Ware.
And you know what? The other thing too that we got to factor,
or God forbid, Bryant's getting minutes ahead of Ware.
Oh, stop! Don't even do that.
I mean, I've been at this a long time.
It's July 8th. Don't start that.
I'm just saying, like it's trust Spo, but it takes Spo a little bit of time sometimes to do what the fans have been calling for months, right? Like,
the other thing that we got to
decide.
The other thing that we got to factor in here is the fact that they owe, they owe their first round pick to the Thunder next season, and it's lottery protected. So they're going to be trying to compete, because if not, if let's say their pick was in the lottery and the pick doesn't convey this next year, it would convey the year after completely unprotected, which is just, I don't like the sound of that, especially when they might not have Jimmy Butler that season. Right, like it doesn't look great right now. Like, they're already a playing team as it stands, so imagine without Jimmy as well. Like, I just think they're probably, and everything we know about them, like all of this comes together to, I think I'm gonna predict. I think the veteran minutes, like, they're gonna be there in the beginning, and like Leif says, there's gonna be plenty of nights when Love doesn't play. I have a feeling that's gonna be the case. I don't want it to be the case. Like, I want to see Larson, I want to see Kashad, I want to see Ware, but I think he's gonna start the vets over them if they're available. I think, like, we're going to see Jay Rich and Burks before we see Pell, and maybe Ware only when Love doesn't play it. Not what I want, but if I had to bet on that, like that scenario, I think that's who Spo starts. It's just like he gives the spots to whoever he thinks is like the best player in that. You know what I mean? Like,
well, sometimes it's also for the development of the young player that they wait a little bit, and that's kind of what happened with Jovic last year. So it's kind of both ways. It's kind of be more competitive now, and then it's also, okay, we're going to make this guy earn it. There's certain things we want him to work on, and sometimes they feel that it's done best on the practice court than in the games. Again, what they did with Jovic last year worked. So my guess is they'll probably, some of that will be done with Ware. But I know, particularly if the team gets off to a slow start and these other teams in the East start off hot, I know what's coming here. And it's going to be this fan base that, like, gives Spo a 99% approval rating, at the same time is going to be criticizing every single one of these rotation moves, like in a Tuesday night game against Detroit. Like, that, this is where
begging us to ask Spo about this.
I hold them accountable. All right, I have to host that show. You're hosting all 82. I'm hopping on right now to playback. So, well, you're not going to hear this until after that. Playback.tv/5RSN. All right, have a good one, everybody.